Good afternoon and evening, depending on where you are around the country. Thank you very much again for joining us for what is our 7th AAAA webinar. For those that don't know me, my name's Stuart Charity. I'm the CEO of the AAAA. I'm joined tonight on this webinar by our Director of Advocacy and Research, Lesley Yates, and our Head of Membership and Marketing, Tiffany Conway. Just before I kick off the presentations tonight, I did just want to take the opportunity to congratulate all of you that are on the call and in the wider industry on how you've collectively tackled this COVID-19 crisis and challenge. Your efforts in keeping Australia's industries and people moving are really inspiring, and I think we've really banded together and to face this unprecedented health and economic crisis. I've got to say, certainly in my living memory, and I think most of yours, this has been one of the most tumultuous periods in business. But you've really led the way with the way that you've innovated and adapted, the way that you've led your staff, served your customers, and protected and grown your business. All the while trying to manage everything that's going on in your business and personal lives. As I said, the efforts are nothing short of remarkable, but we probably shouldn't be surprised, because I genuinely believe one of the key attributes of our industry is innovation and resilience, and you've all delivered that in spades over what has been a very, very difficult time. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank those AAA members, and there's been plenty of them, that have actually taken the time to contact me and us over the last few weeks. I've received an unprecedented number of unsolicited emails, really just thanking the AAA for what we're doing, and I've got to say that means a huge amount to me and to our entire team, and really helps keep our spirits up, and to know that what we're doing is being valued and appreciated out there. So thank you very much for that. And tonight I'm really pleased to be able to continue that support by covering two very important topics during the presentations. Lesley will kick off firstly giving you essentially a highlights package of a recent survey that we undertook of 300 workshops nationally. And to my knowledge, this is the only comprehensive independent survey that's been undertaken by anyone that's really checking in on the industry, what the impact of COVID-19 has been, but also, more importantly, getting a feel for how workshops have adapted to this. And I think this will be important tonight, because it will give you an opportunity to see how you compare with the average of workshops out there, and hopefully give you some ideas that you can implement in your business around best practice. And tonight's Tiffany's session will cover another really important topic, and it'll build on the presentation that she did 2 or 3 weeks ago now on local area marketing, and really what tonight's session will be about is using the enhanced AAA car park data, which has just been recently released to help that marketing effort in your business. And that's important because research shows that the businesses that do invest time and effort in their marketing are better businesses. They're more resilient in times of stress and difficulty like we're facing now, and they're also they come out the other side a lot stronger. So now really is the time to really put the accelerator down and start thinking how you're going to come out the other side and making your business stronger. So the enhanced car park data, as you'll hear tonight, it includes 2 features. We have had car park data for a number of years now, but we've listened to members about what you want and need to make this service better. And this year's iteration it includes 2 really important features. The first one is we've integrated the car park database with a demographics database. So that enables you to profile your local community along with the vehicle makes, models and age of those vehicles in that community. So you can find out essential demographic information, such as things like the average age of vehicles in your, average age of people in your community, the number of cars per household, the average income, and the family composition. And that's really important and helpful when you're targeting your strategies and your communication out to your local area. The second enhancement is a new national database for manufacturers and distributors, and that includes national and state car park data. And that's really about supporting our automotive parts manufacturers, retailers, and vehicle modifiers to help improve their business and their targeting. I will say that we're not going to go into that new feature tonight, because we're really focusing on assisting small businesses target in their local area. But if you do want information on that feature, we'd be happy to for you to contact the office, and we'll probably incorporate it into a future webinar topic. Just before we do kick off with the formal presentations, I did just want to run through some housekeeping points. So the agenda tonight is I'll shortly hand over to Lesley and then on to Tiff for the formal presentations. They'll collectively take around 30 minutes, and then as usual, we'll have an interactive Q&A session where you can ask questions of the panelists. Those of you that have been on webinars before, you know the drill, but we don't, because of the numbers of people on webinars, we don't actually activate your microphone. So but we encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A button at the bottom. If you move your cursor around, you'll see a Q&A button. Type your questions in there and we'll get to those during the Q&A session. The final reminder about tonight is that the actual survey that Lesley is presenting on will send you the full survey results after this webinar, probably tomorrow, but so you don't need to take notes on that. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to hand over to Lesley Yates to kick off the presentations. Thanks, Lesley.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stuart, and welcome everyone. How great to see you all coming up on my screen as participants. Normally I'd say to you, how's business? Well, I kind of know how business is because we've just surveyed over 300 workshops to ask exactly that question. How are people faring under COVID-19? What I'm going to do tonight is just cover the major themes. What I've extracted is the stuff that would be the most interesting for you tonight, rather than give you the full 1 hour session. And as Stuart mentioned, you'll get the full slide pack tomorrow. So I'm going to go through what I think are the highlights, but if there are other things that you're interested in, they're probably in the full slide pack. But if they're not, give us a call and I'm happy to have a chat. Let's cut straight to the bottom line, shall we? I'll start with the bad news. So you can see here that in terms of impact on revenue, the automotive workshops industry is certainly not immune. No one's immune to COVID-19. We've all caught the economic impact. Not many companies are experiencing an uptake in revenue and staffing, unless of course you're able to produce hand sanitizer and other protective equipment. So you can see here we've got an 84% effect on our revenues. And that's probably the worst bit of information I'm going to give you. It's pretty consistent across franchises, chains, and what we'd call standalone workshops. The numbers are pretty consistent. As we go through this, you will see some variations, but effectively the message that we're getting out is that we've had a hit, and close to half of automotive workshops in Australia are actually eligible for JobKeeper, because we're using that 30% decrease in revenue as our shorthand for how severe the impact is. So if you're interested now in having a look at how you've fared, but these results will give you some sense of where you might sit in relation to all of your colleagues. So we were interested to find out whether or not there were variations across states. I wonder how many Victorians we've got on the line, but you can see here that Victoria, Tasmania took the biggest hit with 61% of workshops with an over 30% decline in revenue. Now we can extrapolate, we can guess why this is. Victoria was particularly restrictive with the messaging to consumers that you should not leave home unless it's for essential goods and services. Effectively, many consumers read that to mean they can go out and do some food shopping and that's all. So the Victorian government messaging really put a lot of pressure on people not to leave home. And in speaking to a lot of Victorian workshops, they were certainly feeling that, which is why some of our messaging, particularly to government and our members, was to get out there and say, you are allowed to engage in essential goods and services. And we are certainly an essential service, particularly if you need your vehicle to go and get your groceries, or you are caring for loved ones or neighbours and you need your car. So I think we were able to pull that back a little bit, and we did a little bit more research in the second week and found that some of that was easing off. But Queensland at 41% and Vic at 61% with a large downturn shows you the extremes. Also, as we suspected, regional were able to hang on to their customer base a bit more than metro. One of the benefits that we had when we ran this survey with ACA Research is that they have been running a regular small to medium enterprise research program with a lot of other sectors. And they picked the key sectors for us that are similar in that they require consumers to leave their home and visit. So this is an interesting slide that tells you how we fared in relation to hospitality and retail. Now, of course, retail got a little bit of an advantage over us because you can order online, and you can see there that 14% actually dived into that market and got an increase in revenue contrary to every trend rate. But look at hospitality. What an industry. It was not a good time to open a cafe, folks. So as bad as things got for us and still are for us, yeah, be thankful you're not trying to open a small coffee shop and you're in your first 3 months of operation. So certainly big hit down here at 49%. But again, look at that less than 30% decline. There weren't too many automotive workshops that would say we are completely unaffected by COVID-19. So let me give you some good news. So the bad news is, yes, we were hit. That's hardly rocket science. Everyone's had a hit. But look at the level of optimism. And you would have seen in the media that we put out to the market, we said impacted, but optimistic. And what you're looking at here is, and there are some more details to come, you're looking at a very resilient sector. And I am always encouraged by the statement, yeah, we're impacted, but we're going to get through this. And that is certainly a theme of all of the impact survey. And I'll mention at the end, we are going to be repeating the survey, but we're expecting that level of optimism to go up. Now, we ran this survey in May. About May 5th to May 11th was the first tranche, and we got another 100 after that, and there was a slight improvement. So I'm wondering about whether or not the slides you've just looked at are getting close to being the bottom. And what you're seeing here, the optimism grows over time, and it certainly grew in a 1 week period. And the thing that we are learning through COVID-19 is that it changes on a week by week and sometimes a day by day basis, based on what the government is saying about what support is available to business, but also based on what information is going out to our customers about what they are and aren't allowed to do. So these were some interesting numbers about optimism. We also asked questions about, are you actually worried about your survival? Two different questions. Do you think you're going to get through this? But in the long term, if you've taken a hit to some of the reserves and the savings that you put aside, how worried are you about getting through this? That's particularly relevant if you think there's going to be a second or a third or even a fourth wave. So you might feel like you got through this crisis, but gee, if things don't progress along an upward path, I am very worried. Again, look at that terrible hospitality number. So half of the cafes and restaurants that you visit are worried they're not going to be here. We've got people who are quite concerned, but it is a global pandemic. It's probably completely appropriate that people are quite concerned. But the very concerned is quite low in comparison to other sectors. So quite encouraged about that. We can extrapolate out that number, but I think our numbers are looking pretty good. We got a half-half. I mean, 8% of our workshops there, they're not worried at all. That shows you the number of workshops that are completely backing themselves. The level of concern in the middle is probably accurate, and we certainly fare well compared to the other sectors. Interesting just to see how optimistic we are about our survival compared to all of the other sectors out there. We also asked people about the next 4 weeks. So just again, we're taking this on a day-to-day and a week-by-week basis. But how do you think things might look if we check in with you in 1 month? We probably fare the best, nearly the best in terms of all of the sectors for better. So we're actually expecting things to improve. Once again, a level of optimism. I noticed that 13% of our respondents said it's too difficult to know. That's probably an accurate statement as well. I mean, who knows? But all things being equal, and given what I know today, we've got a good number saying things are going to be as they are today, not worse, and things are going to get better. So that's encouraging. One of the things that we were really interested in understanding, I mean, the fact that we've taken a hit to the bottom line, again, that's not rocket science. We didn't want to know the quantum, and we wanted to know how people are feeling about the future. But we were also keen to gather some data about what people are doing in order to keep the doors open. So you'll see here that the biggest thing that all of our workshops did, first of all, is look at where they can reduce operational costs. That's particularly high over here in the franchise workshops. And we do know from speaking to the head offices of workshops that do belong to a group that they were in particular giving very specific advice to workshops about going through accounts and looking at which invoices can be delayed, which purchases can be delayed, and which suppliers they should be contacting straight away to discuss what the circumstances are and what conditions what arrangements we can come to make sure that we are both here. We're both here to share our war stories in 6 months and 12 months' time. We've got a really huge number of workshops talking to the landlord. I'll show you in a moment. That's quite unique. So negotiating better terms, I'm really encouraged that people picked up the phone and talked to their partners, to their customers, to their suppliers, to the people who owe them money, and to the people they owe money to. So it's just building a picture of an industry that is optimistic, but also quite in control of the cost base and feeling like they had a level of control over their future. And have a look at what we did in comparison to the others. So just look at that line of speaking to the landlord about rent relief. Now, we had a few calls to AAA head office about this, and we were giving some advice on a state-by-state basis about what to do if the landlord would not play ball. But the numbers are quite interesting when you look at our ability to get relief from the landlord compared to other sectors. So retail sector in particular didn't fare well. So I think there's probably a whole lot of retail shops in those large shopping centres that weren't negotiating well. But, you know, we did everything that we could to talk to our suppliers and deal with the incoming bills before we looked to reduce operating hours. So it's quite impressive. It's really interesting to have a look at that reduced staff wages line. So there are some additional slides that you'll get in your full pack, but the staff wages that were reduced were those of the owners. Management reduced their wages, not frontline staff, not the technicians, and not the apprentices. So the owners of workshops said, I'll take the hit first in order to protect the staff. People hung on to staff as much as they possibly could. And if there were savings to be made, it was by reducing or altering the operating hours. So I know that you'll all be thinking about what you've done, what measures that you took, and I hope that you find this data interesting to check in and see what others were doing. So just having a look at the staffing issue, there were a few staffing slides in the full pack, but have a look at what we did. In terms of cutting down on the number of employees, we hung on more so than most of the other sectors. So no change and increased up there at 72%. So a real demonstration of a sector that cares about their employees, and that's something that we certainly packaged up and talked to government about. We're an industry that knows that skilled labour is highly valued, and we'll do everything we can to hang on to good staff. So you can see here the change in number of staff. Some variations across workshops from independent to franchise. Really good numbers there on apprenticeships, some concerning numbers on qualified technicians. We're hopeful that these are staff members that may have been stood down but were eligible for JobKeeper. So we will be repeating this survey, and we're hoping to see some of these staff coming back into the workshop and being gainfully employed in billable hours. One of the things we wanted to know was, what are you doing differently? Understandably, I know everyone on the webinar probably introduced new services, either to protect staff, to protect customers, probably both. And certainly that was the information that we were getting, that effort was going into sanitising interiors, particularly looking at different methods of drop-off and pick-up, lots of SSF messaging to tell people that the workshop was still open. I mean, now's a good time to get car serviced if you're not using it every day to go to work, and you do need to rely on that vehicle, and you better make sure that it doesn't have a flat tyre or a flat battery. Some really interesting results there on new initiatives, so complementary services for medical staff. That was interesting, and I think a good technique to get the message out that not only are we open, but we're a responsible sector. Not a lot of energy into mobile servicing, but as you know, it takes a bit of infrastructure to set that up. I'm certain that there were some mobile call outs, but that's a bit different from a mobile logbook service. And we'll try and drill down a little more into that in future surveys. We were interested to talk to workshops about how they were feeling about the government response. So by the time we had done this, JobKeeper was announced, apprenticeship, the instant asset write-off, accelerated depreciation, so pretty much all the programs that are general had already been announced. So it was a good time to check in and say, how do you think the government is responding to COVID-19? And look, we've got some good numbers here. And again, we've passed these on to government, or a pretty happy sector. We could certainly be happier, by the way, and we'll talk about that later. But these numbers are good. People are pretty satisfied. More importantly for us, though, I think, was whether or not they were happy with the design of the stimulus packages, because whilst you can be happy with the government rolling in a response quickly and shutting our borders and dealing with international travel, what we really wanted to know is that those packages that have been designed to support business, are they hitting the road? Are people accessing them? Are they useful? And again, good numbers here. I mean, 27% extremely satisfied. Once again, we're one of the happiest sectors the government's going to be dealing with. And here we ask people, what are you taking up, or what do you intend to take up? At the time, I think there was a lot more emphasis on the apprenticeship subsidy, that 50% wage subsidy, because that had been out longer. Remember, that was one of the very first programs announced. And again, they're great numbers. We are seeing I mean, they're fairly low numbers for the tax-free cash flow support, because effectively that's an as of right and everyone's entitled to receive that. But people might have been confused, or it might not have actually hit the bottom line yet. So I don't think the cash had begun to flow. The JobKeeper payment, that was really interesting, because that's our ability, that shows us and validates the numbers of more than 30% downturn in revenue. So you can't get the $1,500 JobKeeper payment unless you have a 30% downturn in revenue. And this shows us that good validation of that number I showed you early on. About half of our workshops are applying for JobKeeper payment. Some of them right from the get-go, and some of them finding that April wasn't bad, March, April went bad, but May is the downturn that they're feeling, and they may even be applying from the beginning of June. So you can break into that program when and as you meet that 30% downturn. So that was interesting. I think what was really interesting to us is that 1 in 4 is looking at the instant asset write-off. So here we're talking about workshops that are not only surviving this global pandemic, but they're actually looking at this as an opportunity to invest. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, never waste a crisis, and that's what's happening here. So you're going to give me some opportunities and some incentives to spend. Some workshops are saying, thank you very much, we will do that, and that's good news. There's also some good news in that the instant asset write-off has been increased, and we'll put some information on that in the e-news. So good news if you are an investor. We got some feedback on the sorts of things that we've been doing. There's more information in the full pack and I won't dwell on them, but we were really interested as a way of finding out how people were faring. A good question to ask is, what do you need? What have you been using? And what have you found the most useful? And at the time that we ran this, the fact sheets that we were producing were highly valued, as were the employment information. And I think at that time, government wasn't as good as they have been in the past 2 weeks at packaging up the information. I see the ATO has got into little videos now. So we are living in interesting times when the ATO thinks they need to be user-friendly. So I think the government information has improved. And we've certainly seen less reliance upon us having to take every government program, put it into plain English and repackage it to make it suitable for our workshops. So this was an interesting piece of advice to us about what we should be doing more or less of, but it was also some interesting feedback about what's actually useful during a crisis. So let me just cover what I think are our key themes here. Our key themes were that yes, severely impacted. How could we not be? We are an optimistic sector, and that was important. We did get some feedback from workshops saying thank you for that. We don't really want to be a sector out in the media saying, oh my God, it's all doom and gloom. We want our customers to have confidence that we're open for business and we are a viable, sustainable business, and the numbers back that up, so we were able to do that. Across the board, people are pretty happy with government. Mind you, a day's a long time in politics, so let's see how people feel the next time we do a survey. And look, some good feedback to us as an industry association about what we've been doing, which gives us some intelligence about what we should be doing in the future. Now, we're going to repeat this survey. We're going to do it again in July, and we're going to do it again in September. This is going to give us a sense of whether or not there is a rebounding of business, how valuable the government programs have been, and also how people are feeling about the reduction in assistance, in government assistance that's anticipated after September. So we expect to get some more intel. We'll be tracking some of those numbers. So some of the questions will repeat, but we'll be getting some more intel in the meantime. Can I say that if you are one of the workshops that participated in our survey, thank you so much. We can't do this without the intel that you give us, so thank you for giving up your time and participating. If you are contacted again by us asking you to fill out an online survey, you have my undying gratitude if you participate again. We'd certainly like to have your input. This is the way that we get the most information about what we can do. It stops us guessing what you need and what you might need into the future. So speaking about support and giving you assistance for growth, it is my great pleasure to hand over to Tiffany Conway. I'm really excited about the car park data, and I'm really excited about the opportunity for Tiffany to show you how that works and just how valuable it is. So without further ado, Tiff.
Thank you very much, Lesley. Fantastic for me to hear those results again, and it was a very insightful study. And it's also really nice to be talking about life on the other side of COVID-19. So I'm going to share my screen, which is going to take us straight to the member portal on the AAAA website. And I am going to talk about local area marketing, but I'm going to do it through our journey through the interactive car park data by area. So as I work through this, a couple of things to note. I'm going into this as Tiff's Auto Workshop, and I'm in the suburb of Cheltenham in Victoria. And one of the things that I have done that you will also need to do is just do your member login. So you'll have your username and your password. If you don't have that handy, absolutely no problem. Please just contact us and we will arm you with that information so that you can get in. Once you're in the member portal, you're going to hit this market intelligence button and the car park data. And as I just mentioned, the first slide pack you're going to come across here is the interactive car park data by area. And just going over onto these 3 buttons here, the bottom one takes us to a full screen. All right. So moving right along, the first thing I'm going to do when I jump in here is I'm in Cheltenham, so my postcode 92, which tells me that I am in the local government area of Bayside. Okay, good to go. Next one. And I'm going to click on this first button here, which is the car park. And I know my local government area is Bayside towards the top, so I'll just scroll down. But if you're a long way down, I'd suggest you might want to type that in. And this is pretty interesting from the get-go. So what I see in there is, you know, when you look at the national population, 17.5 million cars, what does that mean for me, where I am? So in my area of Bayside, you can see there that I've got about 63,000 cars that are clearly in independent workshop available market, right? Which is these 2 here, the 5 to 7 years old cars and the 8+. One of the things to note with the 5 to 7s is that the 5 to 7 year olds are likely transitioning from the dealer to independent workshop. So one of the things we've talked about internally here is that there's a clear opportunity that if you nurture these well, they are going to become your loyal repeat business. The other thing you've got is over 25,000 cars that are likely, quite possibly, still in dealer land. But they are definitely your new business pipeline for our independent workshops. Now, another thing to point out here is, you know, when you look at the national population, and I look at Bayside, and you might go, well, really, how different is each area? And even if you just do, and I'm just in the Bs, you can see how that proportion of the 0 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, and 8 years plus really does change, and of course the quantum, but it's more about the proportion, which is a good indication. Oh, hold on one second. Of how the population changes and its unique attributes for your area. All right, so I'm in Bayside and I know what I'm working with here. So as I move on to this slide 5, which is the total car park over time, what this shows me, quite simply, is that Bayside has grown. It's just these numbers in each area, in each split of the car age groups, is larger. There has been a slight increase in the newer cars, but by and large, what I take from this slide is that I have got a larger market size to grow my business in. Okay. So slide 6. Now this is where I have my first wow moment, because when you look at 2014 and you look at the profile of cars where we start with Toyota, Holden, Ford, and of course we're just looking at Marques at the moment, and then that change where we've got Mazda now, that the second highest mark in 2019, I'm like, okay, that's quite a big change over a 5-year period. So what does that mean for me? And what it means to me is, I guess a couple of things is I can start creating some marketing planning around this. and that's why I want to sit on this slide for a little while, because the first one, and I know this is a really important marketing tool for independent workshops, is our Google search. So when I look at my top marks, being Toyota, Mazda, Holden, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, they're all performing quite strongly there. But the other thing I notice, and it's worthwhile, and as you put your mouse over the age groups, it'll highlight just those categories. And what you can see in the 0 to 5 is the growth in the newer cars, in the Mazda, in the Mercedes-Benz, in the Volkswagen. So that's pretty interesting. And what that says to me is, okay, new business prospecting and building my pipeline for my future customer base, I really want to start targeting my keywords around potentially something like this: Mazda service, Toyota service, Mazda in warranty service, Toyota specialist servicing, Mercedes-Benz service. So starting to call out car brands that those customers will relate to, car brands that will trigger something, a connection, a element of curiosity for customers in your area. The other thing that we can do is, again, using insight at just this level, and we haven't gone any deeper yet, to start carrying that theme of tailoring through Facebook posts that have Toyota, Mazda, Mercedes and Volkswagens in the photos, videos and posts to show that I specialise in those makes. Further, I'll write posts and show images that communicate that I service those cars in their warranty period, and ask readers potentially to click on an article where I highlight why my service is higher quality than my competition. What makes coming to me different and more competitive than potentially going to a dealer service centre or something else. Now, at this point, I'm doing two things. Again, we're only on slide 6 and we're only at the higher level of tailoring and segmenting. At this point, I'm not only promoting my business to the right target audience, but I'm making the search and selection process easier for them. Finding the right mechanic is a customer pain point that you are already addressing. The other thing that we can do, again, to do that multi-layered approach, so one of the things that I talked about in my last presentation about local area marketing was the importance of integration. And the importance of using the full marketing mix to really get your message across and to position your workshop the way that you want it to achieve the goals for your business. So the next element of the marketing mix that you can start using here is putting up some signage and branding around the workshop that says, I specialise in Toyota or Mazda. Ask me about Mazda servicing within the warranty period. You can choose your repairer. Or again, maybe tapping into the European profile in some of my vehicles there. Position yourself as a European car specialist, increasing branding in the workshop and in your advertising with Mercedes, VW and maybe your BMW branding. In terms of having the or there, and that option there, is you can scan your local competition to assess what might be best for you, noting that the volume of Toyota and Mazda is greater. However, the average margin per surface may be better on your European brands. But you'll know that, you'll know your area. What you can do here is use that data to start inquiring about different options that might be best for your business. Alrighty, so that's just our marks. So next level, our top models, again, in Bayside. So what I'm looking at here, so one of the things that I noticed in a previous slide was, of course, Holden looked like it was slipping back and Mazda was making a run for the lead. But of course, what we're looking at here is the top models in Bayside, Holden Commodore's the top of the list. Now, this will make sense shortly when we look at the demographics, which is coming up. However, let's have another look at what we can do with this data to inform our marketing decisions. So again, I'm just using my mouse over these buttons. So our 8 years plus, this is most likely our our independent workshop market. And so a question for your business is, do I see this profile of car model coming through my workshop? And if not, why not? And if they're not coming to me, where are they going? And when I look at these models and some of the differences between these models, the Holden Commodore might be the top of the list for models in my area, but do I want them? And again, it's just, and this is certainly one of the things to appreciate in the car park data, is that it may generate more questions than it answers, and that's a really good thing. That's really healthy in terms of getting to what are the right questions and answers to make the most out of your business. Okay. So again, with these top models in mind, all the sort of targeting that I spoke about with the Marques and applying that to your marketing mix, you can do the same thing here. You can take your keyword search and, you know, once you select a set of keywords, you don't have to use them all the time. Test them for a few weeks, see what happens. If some are way outperforming others, then you know you're going to keep them there, but then introduce some new ones and test those as well. And that's the same thing with your social media marketing, and particularly how you set up your Facebook for Business page. You know, you're going to get vehicle data and demographic data in here that's going to line up with the decisions that you're going to be making in Facebook really well. So, you know, again, you're going to have some great data that you can start making decisions on, and then just test and trial them over time. Okay. So, speaking about demographics. All right. So this is Bayside. So what insights can I take from this simple one page? My first one is, if I look at the age visual there, my first one is this in Bayside. My area skews towards older. 62% of my population is over 45. And they're kind of in the family zone, which explains, you know, some of the models we saw before and why our population of newer CX5s and older Foresters is up there. And it also, you know, making some generalizations about population, which you are allowed to do. You might want to test them over time. It may explain the large number of smaller models as well. When we look at average weekly income, what I know about the Bayside area is that there's a few suburbs in there that have really inflated this average weekly income, and that is not necessarily the norm across my whole local government area. Now, I can know that and I can be happy with that based on my local knowledge. This might be one of these things, if it doesn't feel quite right to you, if it doesn't sit with what you know about your area, this is where you might like to ask us for more information. This is where you might go, you know what, that doesn't feel right, and it might be right for the whole local government area, but I just want to know about these 3 or 4 suburbs, and you can ask us for that. Okay. Now, based on this one, the average number of cars per household, what this says to me is that I'm going to ask every customer if they own another car, because I know I've got 50% chance of getting a yes and turning that into new business. The other thing that I'm going to do, based on the average number of children per household being slightly higher in the Bayside area, is in my marketing communications, I'm going to make sure, it may not be all the time, but I'm going to make sure that I've got some regular messages in there about safety, because it's going to resonate with people in my area. Now, as I mentioned before, this kind of demographic data actually helps us to make some really good decisions about how to use Facebook for Business. Just from looking at this one page, I have a better idea of what family age and geographic parameters to select for targeting and testing within Facebook and potentially Instagram. All right. So, now, when we were on slide 6, and let me go back, we saw all those Toyotas and the Mazdas as the most popular vehicles, or Marques, in our area. Now, we all know there's a very big range of vehicles within Toyota and Mazda. So this is where we go to this area where we can start looking at models by marque. Okay. Wow. So who the heck is driving all those Corollas? That's a lot of Corollas in one area. It's virtually a market in itself. If you're a small workshop and there's 2,000 Corollas, even more, nearly 3,000 Corollas in your area, that's definitely something you can focus on. So with my marketing hat on, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to test some tailoring in my search, social, database, and in-store marketing around Toyota Corolla, because there's too many of them not to. Now, one of the things to think about, and you may well know this in your local area, but this is where you can take this little hint of an insight and do some detective work yourself and maybe find out if there's larger businesses or medium to large size businesses in your area who have got fleets of Toyota Corollas. Okay, well, once you know that, then what do you do? So again, one of the things that I spoke about in my marketing presentation a couple of weeks ago, integration, part of integrating, different elements of the marketing mix, it is really tapping into that community spirit and being part of the community that you work in. So if you know that a business has got a fleet of Toyota Corollas, there's no reason why you can't knock on their door and engage with them in some way. Connect with that business, whether it's through an event, education, or a special offer just targeted to their staff, if that's the sort of business that you want. But it's an option. It's something that you can have a play with. The other thing that we're looking at here, of course, is seeing the difference in the number of smaller vehicles, so your Toyota Corolla compared to your Toyota Hilux. You're probably going to be speaking to very different demographics in there. So maybe your messaging might be tweaked a little differently. You might talk to other, or tap into other social media influencers that are likely going to hit the mark with a target audience for those vehicles specifically. The other one worth having a look at, as I said, is our ever popular Mazda in the Bayside area. So look, you can see here you've got the model breakdown by each of the marques. So I did find this one quite interesting, the number or the proportion of under 5-year-old Mazda 3s and the CX-5, and then of course still the large number in the 8. So again, you can have a play around with that knowledge, run it through your local area marketing activity, and if that's the sort of car you want, start using that branding and that naming throughout your marketing messaging to attract the audience that has those cars. All right, so the rest of this slide deck has just got more marques and models, so I won't go any further with that. However, I did just want to wrap up this section of the webinar by just I guess going back into, take a first step with this. Sign into the member portal, get into the car park data, start exploring. I've just shown you how easy it is to use and how many thoughts and opportunities it can generate just by having a think about the insights that are there at this level. If the local government areas work for you, that's great. You can apply your data findings to your marketing plans and crack on with growing your business. If they don't, you can contact AAA to request data that is specific by postcodes for you. Now, I know we've got Rob Johnson and Nigel Bishop on the webinar tonight, so they know what I'm promising when I say feel free to contact them. So that's Rob or Nigel, and they can certainly help you in the first instance. Or just send us an email to AAA and we can start helping you get the data that you want for your area. And it's important to point out as well that getting that data by postcode, just so you know, and maybe just asking that initial question, you could have a postcode report for your area as soon as within about 24 hours of you asking for it. And at that sort of basic next level, it's at no additional cost to members. So really, if you want to know more, why wouldn't you ask? The other thing that I wanted to point out in just wrapping this up is that, as I said before, your marketing plan really should contain a good mix of digital, search, social and database marketing tactics, and testing some local area advertising and community engagement, which gives you the opportunity to build your brand awareness, position your brand with the sort of servicing and services that you want to offer, and build up a good pipeline of new business to help yourself grow, particularly post-COVID-19. Alrighty, I shall stop sharing. And I think I'm ready to hand over for some questions, Stuart.
You sure are. So thank you very much, Tiff and Lesley, for your presentation. So now's the time of the evening where we invite you to submit some questions via the Q&A button. So as I said, if you move your cursor around, you'll see Q&A. So feel free to type in some questions and we'll throw those to the panel. Just while we're waiting for some questions to come through, we did get a couple of questions in advance. So the first one I'll put to you, Tiff. So the car park data search by local government area is helpful, but my workshop sits right on the border of 2 local government areas, and I really need both data for both areas. Can I select postcodes, or can I get 2 consecutive or concurrent local area data?
Yeah, you definitely can. The answer is yes. So as I said, if you contact in the first instance, Rob, Nigel, email or call AAA and give us an idea of exactly what it is that you're looking for, or the postcodes that you'd like us to deep dive on, we can get that request moving for you.
No problem. So first question that's come through, what about data for heavy vehicles?
Data for heavy vehicles?
Yeah, Tiff, I might answer that one. It's only passenger and light commercial, because the majority of the AAA. Yeah, sorry, Lesley.
We have been able to get some. We're supplementing the car park data with some data that we've purchased from Tech Alliance. So we have been helping some members out that do have some particularly vehicles that tip over into heavy vehicles. We have been able to answer some individual inquiries. I think in terms of actually having heavy vehicles incorporated into the database, we're having a look at that as our next expansion. I hope you're noticing that every time the car park data comes out, it's better and better. So we're adding features, and that's a good tip for us. We'll certainly have a look and see what else that we can do. But at the moment, if you have a heavy vehicle inquiry, I would encourage you to get in contact with Rob and Nigel and see what data we can answer through Tech Alliance. But yeah, we'll investigate it for our next iteration.
No problem. So next question, if my workshop specialises, say, in European vehicles, can I ask for reports in my area that focus specifically on those makes?
Yes, you can. So same deal. You can ask for definitely ask for that range of vehicles, and we'll get back to you with the details. And the details importantly, and I think whether it's postcode, more information about other vehicles, so whatever the data fields were, you can get that information in Excel. So I know, you know, this is one of those processes. It's almost like the more you see, the more you learn, the more you're going to want to ask. And for filtering and for doing things like analysing percentage differences or numeric differences between certain things, and you might want to do your own calculations, particularly for like purchasing, for investing in marketing. So you might want to quantify market size or quantify market value. And when you get that data in an Excel spreadsheet, you can start slicing it up and doing your own analysis to help you make business decisions. So that's helpful too.
No problem. So next question, a good one. How accurate are these statistics and how are they surveyed? Lesley, I might throw that one to you.
Sure. So we surveyed over 300 workshops, and we use ACA as our research partner so that we're making sure we're hitting statistically valid benchmarks. So they're the ones that give us advice about whether or not we've got a data set that is valid. And they do some modulating. So a good example would be if we got a huge take up in Queensland, they would have stopped taking responses from Queensland to make sure that we get a representative sample. So they are accurate. We're able to use some other data sources. So we've got the whole SME tracker just to give us some common sense validation. But I think having a good, credible research partner, that's the way that we make sure that we're not just making this stuff up.
No problems. Again, this is a car park data question. Can you identify between business-owned vehicles and privately owned vehicles?
Well,
yeah,
that would be brilliant if we could do that. I would love to do that. We are having ongoing conversations, and I know many of our large members have a relationship with the Fleet Managers Association to see what we can get on a local basis. I don't know if we're ever going to get down to those little, groups of 6 and 8. And I think that's why Tiff's example of the Toyota Corollas is a brilliant one, because I suspect that many of you know that that number of Corollas has got to have some local businesses running little fleets. I think that smaller fleets that are being run in each of the local government areas, I think that's going to be local knowledge, because I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to drill down to that level. And the ABS data cube that we purchase is really on make and model and not on ownership.
No problems at all. Couple of other questions here. One on the survey. I'm concerned about COVID-19 and our current and future apprentices. Lesley, do you have information on how the COVID crisis has affected apprenticeship numbers? And do you think it will have any long-term effects on our ability to find and keep apprentices?
Look, we did see some shedding of apprentices, or apprentices stood down, but its worst case was about 7%. And if you look at the franchise workshops, they actually picked up apprentices by 7%. So I think long term, we've actually laid down some good credibility, Stuart, that we're actually interested in investing in our staff, and in hard times we will keep them. We've got some anecdotal stuff, not survey based, but anecdotal from some of our members, that some dealerships have shed apprentices and they've been picked up by our sector. So I actually think that our demonstration of being good employers is going to pay off in the long term.
No problems. Final question here, unless any come through on the Q&A. So the last chance to put a question forward, but I want to see percentage differences between car brands by age, so that I can figure out what offers to use to attract new customers and bookings. Can I download this data into an Excel spreadsheet so that I can do my analysis? Tiff, that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So carrying on from what I was saying before, yeah, you can receive this data in an Excel spreadsheet. The other thing that's going to be handy for is not just slicing it and doing an analysis, for your own, for making business decisions, but it may also give you the flexibility if you've got a customer relationship management system, or some sort of service management system. Having it in an Excel format may give you the flexibility to integrate them, which will help with marketing automation as well. So then you don't have to make a diary note to potentially call someone whose service is due in 1 month. If you've got 30 customers who are due for a service in a month, a marketing automation system informed by some of this data will allow you to contact those customers or those prospects in a very efficient way, and then measure the outcomes.
No problems at all. Thank you, Tiff. There is one question that's just come through, which I think will be our last for the night. Is the wage subsidy for apprentices still available? And if so, is there any way we can get in touch with apprentices who have been stood down? I'm assuming the question is stood down by others. The answer to that, I think, is the wage apprentice subsidy is still available, but the catch is that the apprentice had to be on your staff as of, Lesley, is it February or
It's the
March?
1st of March, Stuart,
Yeah.
but there are some There are some concessions if the apprentice was employed by someone else on the 1st of March. So if you've got an apprentice that you could pick up, could you call our office? Because we'd love to give you a hand with that.
No problems at all. Thanks, Lesley. And thanks, John, for that question. All right, no more questions, and we're right on, bang on 7 o'clock. So we'll wrap things up there. But just before we go, you know, I think what's come through, and certainly anecdotally what we're hearing out there, is that, and as Lesley showed tonight through the survey, the trading environment was very, very bad, I think, in that April and early May period. But as we've seen government restrictions lifting around the country, and certainly they're being lifted at different rates in different areas, but I think across the board, what we're seeing is a real upswing in customer demand and customer confidence, and that all goes well for I think the future, you know, or the immediate future of our industry. And as I've said previously, I think all the economic indicators and certainly historical precedents points to our industry bouncing back really strongly, really quickly. So we're quite optimistic that we've probably hit the bottom, and barring any you know, further or second waves of infections, I think you know, you can expect that we are going to start to see that slow, steady increase, hopefully back to normal levels. So hang in there. I know it's been a difficult time, and you've done an amazing job, really sticking at it, rolling up the sleeves, making some changes to your business, and really working through this. And just be aware that we are, you know, and other organisations and some of your suppliers, if your workshops, they're there to support you and help you. We need to work together to get through this, and we can see some light at the end of the tunnel. Just on the car park data, as we said, we're very keen to make continual changes and enhancement to really tailor and give a better product. So any feedback that you have on the car park data once you've used the tool, or even after tonight's webinar, please use the questionnaire after the webinar tonight to give us ideas on how we can enhance or improve that service. But as Tiff said, I'd really encourage you to log on to the member portal and have a play around with your postcode or your local government area and those surrounding you, and I think you'll find that it'll really help you get a better understanding of both the cars and the people in your local catchment zone. So we really encourage you to use that tool and to give us feedback on how we can improve it. So just in closing, I did really want to thank both Lesley and Tiff for your presentations tonight. I've certainly got a lot out of them, and I hope you have. I hope it's given you some food for thought. And just finally, we did, again, just want to thank you all for your participation on the webinar tonight, but more importantly, your ongoing support of the AAAA. We really don't take that for granted. We never would. We know that, you know, membership is a choice that you make every year, and you know, we're working our butts off to make sure that we're delivering services and activities that support you, and we hope that you'll commit to us with your renewals going forward. And just a reminder that the renewals have gone out, but you've got until the end of September to pay those. The other thing I do is encourage you to visit our website. There's a huge amount of resource on there, not just the car park data, but if you go into the member portal, there's a whole section on COVID-19 support. So if you haven't had a look at that, please go and check that out, because I think there's a great resource out there. So that's all from us. Thank you again for being on the webinar tonight, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much, and good night.